What up, though, y'all? It's your boy Shane G. Welcome back to Politics as Usual, right here on the Ethos Media Network. Make sure you like, you share, you subscribe for all the new content. Keep up to date on the news, what's really going on. So today, what we're going to discuss, we are going to get a little bit more. Y'all know I've been covering the whole Ukraine versus Russia with the United States and NATO and all of that back in Ukraine, and my general thoughts on it, just to, for anybody who hasn't been following along episode to episode, my general thoughts on it are that Russia's going to win this war. If it continues, there's no real way for Ukraine to win this unless we full-fledged engage. And when I say us, I mean the United States, unless we full-fledged engage militarily on the side of Ukraine and NATO and go into an all-out hot war with Russia. That's the only way Ukraine wins. And I don't think anybody wants to see that. And as it stands right now, I bet you if you've been following along with this by watching TV, you probably think Ukraine is actually winning this war. So I'm here to basically dispel all of that and show you how, if you're actually on the side of Ukrainians, you want them to strike a peace deal with Russia. You don't want this to continue, because there's no way it ends good for the people of Ukraine and ultimately for us if we end up in a hot war with Russia. That's risking nuclear war. We don't want none of that. So that's what I'm here to discuss with y'all today. And, I like to pull up some articles. So let's get into that. So the first thing we're going to discuss is something that the Pope said, actually. The Pope said that he compared Ukrainian suffering to World War II Nazi death operation, right? So Pope Francis on Wednesday compared the war in Ukraine to a Nazi operation that killed some 2 million people, mostly Jews, in the first years of World War II. Speaking to Polish pilgrims at his weekly general audience, Pope Francis noted that the Catholic University of Lublin in Poland has recently commemorated the anniversary of Operation Reinhardt. It was the code name for a secret operation in part of occupied Poland, which the Germans called the General Government Area, that included territory now in Ukraine. May the memory of this horrible event arouse intentions and actions of peace in everyone, he said, specifically mentioning the operation, saying that it was one of extermination. He then went off script to add, and history is repeating itself. We see now what is happening in Ukraine. Russia calls its invasion of Ukraine a special military operation to denazify the country and root out nationalists it considers dangerous. Ukraine and its allies accuse Moscow of an unprovoked war to grab territory from its pro-Western neighbor. There's a little bit of truth in both of those things. I think both of those things can be true simultaneously. Since the invasion began in February, Francis has been increasingly forceful in his condemnation of Russia's actions. We can stop there. Well, actually, no, I want to read this last paragraph. Last month, he said Ukrainians were suffering a martyrdom of aggression and compared the effects of the war on Ukrainians to the terrible genocide of the 1930s, when Soviet leader Joseph Stalin inflicted famine on the country. Okay, so you can see here that the Pope is basically saying, Ukrainians are suffering. They're not doing well right now. Russia is the aggressor, that type of deal, right? So there's nothing in there that's indicating that Ukraine is winning this, right? Okay. Just want to make sure we're on the same page. Let's keep going. The next thing I want to discuss, Russia threatens to reduce gas supplies to Moldova. Ukrainians warn blackouts could last months. Ukraine's power shortages resulting from Russia's repeated strikes on the country's energy infrastructure are becoming more acute as colder weather sets in. Warnings that cold weather can kill, the World Health Organization said, while 10 million Ukrainians remain without power. So that means there's 10 million Ukrainians who have, for however long, not had power already. Many face life-threatening conditions as temperatures fall to as low as negative 20 degrees Celsius or negative 4 degrees Fahrenheit in some parts of the country. It is believed that another 2 It is believed that another 2 to 3 million people could leave their homes to find warmth and safety over winter. 2 to 3 million people. That's a lot. Now, one last article I want to read. This is from Reuters. Putin says loss of trust in West will make future Ukraine talks harder. President Vladimir Putin said on Friday that Russia's near total loss of trust in the West would make an eventual settlement over Ukraine much harder to reach, although contacts between Russia and U.S. intelligence services were at least continuing. This is why you think Russia's losing, because of stuff like this right here. Since suffering a series of battlefield reverses, Putin has increasingly cast his more than 9-month-old invasion of Ukraine as a fight to defend Russia against an aggressive collective West. That's true. That's a true statement. Because, again, if you know anything about the history, the agreement was that we were not supposed to expand NATO any closer to Russia's borders, and we continued to do that. That's where a lot of this starts from. We continued to do that anyway. We have NATO ships on Russia's border on the sea. So I believe it's either the Red Sea or the Black Sea. I'm not sure which one, but it's one of those two. And whichever one of those borders Russia. But yeah, we just have ships there. Like, so what does that tell you? You know what I mean? We wouldn't stand for that if another country just had naval ships just posted up outside Florida. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'd be like, nah, that's an aggressive act. So why wouldn't Russia take it that way? You know what I'm saying? Especially when the agreement was not to do that in the first place. You get what I mean? So that is a fact, that it is an aggressive collective West. That's the U.S., NATO, all of that. And we're backing Ukraine in a war against Russia. You know what I'm saying? So how is it not that? Now, I'm not saying, again, that, Putin is just this nice guy who's trying to get rid of the Nazis in the Ukraine military and save his people and all of that. Like, yeah, of course he's going to paint it that way. And I'm sure there is a lot more to do with like territorial gain and, you know what I'm saying, power and things like that. Like, I'm not praising Putin by any means here. But at the same time, that doesn't mean everything he's saying is not true either. That's one of the things I like when people say Russian propaganda, just to deflect from a point instead of actually addressing the point that's being made. That's always funny to me. So, because it's like, okay, you can call it Russian propaganda all you want to, but does that make the thing not true? You get what I mean? Like, that's the whole thing. So, if it's not true, then we're talking about something different. So, but yeah. So why do you think that the mainstream media has you convinced that Ukraine is winning the war? We just heard it on the Dave Chappelle monologue, where he was addressing, the Kanye Kyrie stuff. That was basically the only part of the monologue that, I was like, you're really getting this one wrong, Dave. You know what I'm saying? Like, the rest of it, it was like, okay, you're bringing understanding to why people might say certain things, even if it's not true. You get what I'm saying? Like, that's how I took the first part of it, where he's like, everything he said, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to get into it here, but that was what I took away from it. He was like, yes, this thing may not be true, but here is why people think this. You get what I'm saying? So that was the first part. But then the second part, he kind of dabbled in the Donald Trump Russia stuff. I basically took that as a joke, whatever. But then when he was like, man, them Ukrainians, they doing their thing, ain't they? And everybody started cheering. And I was like, see, everybody believes that Ukraine is winning this. You know what I mean? And that's not the case. That's not the case at all. As we just read, there's people who have been out of power for months in Ukraine. 10 million people, I believe, was the number of people who are, you know what I mean? Like, without power in Ukraine right now. So my whole thing with this is I'm anti-war. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't believe that war benefits really anybody except for a very few rich people who are, calling the shots, basically. I feel like they're the only people that truly benefit from war. So everybody else suffers. The military, the actual soldiers in the military, they suffer. They come back with PTSD. They come back with missing limbs. They come back, like they come back in comas, like all types of wild shit that they got to go through, to so-called defend the country. You know what I mean? And I don't think that they don't honestly feel that way. That's why I still, have the utmost respect for veterans because to a certain degree, the whole country's been brainwashed into thinking that that's the way that you defend the country is by joining the military and killing a bunch of people overseas. Somehow that's defending the country. Like, I think that's brainwashing, but I don't blame the people who have been brainwashed. You know what I mean? I blame the forces that push that narrative out there. I think that may have been true at a time where you joined the military, like World War II, and maybe before that, yeah, you joined the military to literally defend the country because there's forces that are trying to take over the world at that time. You know what I mean? The Nazis were trying to take over the world. So, if yeah, that's actually defending the country in that situation. But sending our troops all over the world, overseas, bombing people, killing women, children, bombing schools, bombing hospitals, which we do consistently. You know what I'm saying? Like when it's stuff like that, how are you defending the country? You know what I mean? So again, this is not an attack on the soldiers. I'm just saying if you really look at it for what it is, that's it's not really defending the country in my opinion. But I still respect the veterans and I still because you really believe that that's what you're doing. So if I have to respect that, like I have to respect anybody who truly believes that they're defending the honor and they're defending the lives of the citizens in the country. You know what I mean? If you truly believe that's what you're doing, then I don't have a problem with you. I have a problem with the people who led you to believe that that's what you're doing, if that makes sense. So hopefully I was clear enough in that explanation. But um, at the end of the day, we got to avoid nuclear war because that's the end of humanity if that happens. You know what I'm saying? Like Russia, they're a nuclear country. We're a nuclear armed country. You know what I'm saying? All our allies, they got nukes. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm sure the people who are linking up, China, I'm sure they got nukes. You know what I mean? So it's like, how far do we want this to go? Just because Donald Trump is bad. You get what I'm saying? Because that's really at the end of the day what this all comes down to. It comes down to the whole time Trump is running, everybody's like, oh, he's a Russian puppet, and everybody hates Trump. So you tie Trump to Russia for 4 or 5 years. They're still doing it now. You know what I mean? Again, alluding to the Dave Chappelle joke, he even said something about it. And I was like, oh, come on, Dave. Like, he usually be getting it right. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, that's what this is really about. This is really about they have convinced the American people that Trump is so horrible and that he's connected with Russia. Therefore, anything we do against Russia is a good thing. That's really what this comes down to. And that's just a horrible way of thinking about it. Because again, if your aim in your heart and in your mind is to save Ukrainian lives, then you want them to strike a peace deal with Russia ASAP. Because we just read what's actually happening. The Pope, he said what's actually happening. He might be, I don't know exactly if it's that bad, but, like he's comparing it to like some of the worst things that have happened in history. Like I said, I don't know if that's necessarily an accurate comparison, but a lot of people are suffering. That part's true. You know what I'm saying? So if you care about Ukrainian lives, man, like you want them to strike a peace deal. You don't want more of their energy grid to be wiped out and more people. There's 10 million people who don't have power still. So that's all I'm saying. That's why I'm so against this whole idea of the U.S., pushing Ukraine into continuing fighting Russia. It's not that Ukraine doesn't have a right to defend themselves. It's let's look at this for what it is. If 100 people are outside your front door and they all got problems with you, are you walking outside? That's what's happening right now. That's what that is. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the United States is just funneling weapons in through the back door for that one dude to fight off them 100 people. That's sort of what's going on right now. Russia is that 100 people. Yeah, you might be able to take a few out here and there, you know what I'm saying, from your door, but eventually they're gonna break the door down and they're gonna get, you know what I'm saying? So this is Politics as Usual right here on the Ethos Media Network. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you like, you share, you subscribe. We definitely appreciate all the support. This has been a wonderful year for us, and we continue, hope to continue doing big things next year. And this show is not going to stop though. This is still going to continue to go. I might take another week off, over the holidays or whatever, but for the most part, I'm gonna be right here doing my thing. So I appreciate all the love and everybody who's been watching. And like I said, make sure you share the content. That's the most important thing. Make sure you like, you subscribe, and if you want to turn on them notification bells, so that way, whenever some new content drops, you're the first one with it. We would appreciate that too. But until next time, this is Shane G. This is Politics as Usual, right here on the Ethos Media Network. Peace.